This video is sponsored by Audible, and I've got a really exciting audiobook to recommend to you at the end, so stay tuned. Hello my beautiful watchers. Earthsea. This episode was originally going to be just a standard episode of Lost in Adaptation, the show where I discuss the differences between film adaptations of books to said books with the aim of seeing if they did them any semblance of justice. However, the build-up to doing it was such a roller coaster of emotion for me, I felt that I had to go into a little more depth regarding the books and the story behind this adaptation's creation before doing a direct comparison so that, well, to be completely honest with you, to make sure that you suffer like I have suffered. Okay. Let's start at the beginning. Ursula K Le Guin was a 20th century American author and, to be frank, a total badass. Before we go any further, if you, like me, are one of the people who didn't read her books until now, I'm going to need you to take part in a little group activity with me. Just go ahead and raise your hand, either hand is fine, and then slap yourself in the face. If you don't have the guts to do it really hard, you can do it like 4 or 5 times in rapid succession. This is our deserved punishment for not appreciating Le Guin years ago. In her lifetime, she received 6 Nebulas, 8 Hugos, and 22 Locus Awards. In 2003, she became the second woman honored as a Grand Master of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. Notable works include The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed, which were well received for discussing feminism and gender politics. She created a race of people who could change their gender at will, which dismantled anyone being put down due to their sexuality or gender. And she did this in the bloody 70s. Le Guin's contributions to science fiction are also not to be overlooked. In her 1966 novel Recanant World, she came up with a fictional mathematical theory for achieving faster-than-light communication that was so revered it was copied and referenced by name by countless succeeding writers. And if that wasn't enough, she was one of the very few popular fantasy and science fiction writers of her time to consistently write people of color as her book's main protagonists. And that wasn't easy. She had to fight for it.
Gradually, I got a little more clout, a little more say-so about covers, and very gradually, publishers may be beginning to lose their blind fear of putting a non-white face on the cover of a book. Hurt sales is the mantra. Yeah, so, on my books, Get with a White Face is a lie, a betrayal of the book and of the potential reader.
So this is what stunning feels like. I did wonder. I swear, now that I've experienced some of her novels, I can see the massive influence she had on the fantasy genre. I'm kind of surprised and sad that Le Guin isn't as commonly mentioned with the other famous authors of the 20th century as she deserves to be. I know a lot of my lack of knowledge of her was a personal failing, hence my self-inflicted punishment, but I do feel she's not talked about enough. One of her most popular fantasy series of books was Earthsea, sometimes known as the Earthsea Cycle and the Tales of Earthsea. It all began with A Wizard of Earthsea in 1968 and was followed by The Tombs of Atuan in 1971 and The Farthest Shore in 1972. They chronicle, amongst other things, the life and adventures of an uber-talented wizard by the name of Ged as he travels a fantasy world dealing with problems on both a cosmic and deeply personal scale. Despite what the speed of their release might imply, none of these books are direct sequels. All 3 are standalone stories, either starring or heavily involving Ged, but with almost completely disconnected plots set decades apart from each other. Just in case it wasn't clear, Earthsea is the name of the world the story takes place on, as well as the name of the series, and the wonderful uniqueness of said Earthsea world is a major draw of the books. For starters, it's a world that lacks any major landmasses, just a crap ton of small to medium-sized islands, and as such provides an interesting look at how Iron Age societies might develop around such a universal dependence on sea travel. None of the major nations seem to be direct allegories of any real-world countries, not that there's anything wrong with allegorical books, it's just nice to have some variety sometimes. Probably its single greatest feature, though, is the magic system that Le Guin devised. When it comes to wizardry, the majority of pseudo-medieval fantasy stories tend to draw pretty heavily from English folklore and Arthurian legends. Le Guin chose to incorporate a lot more inspiration from Native American and Norse culture, along with a ton of Taoist philosophy. Magic in Earthsea also works on the true name, power of names idea, and while Le Guin didn't invent this out of thin air, it's a mythology that dates as far back as ancient Greece and Egypt, it cannot be overstated how creatively and intelligently she applied its use to her world. The general idea is that everything that exists has a true name that sometimes even they don't know, and if you can learn a thing's true name, it gives you a great deal of power over that thing. As a result, like 99% of wizard training is spent memorizing the true names of objects so that you can channel your magic into affecting them. I think I'm retroactively even angry at Aragon now that I know that this was yet another thing that Paolini copy and pasted from a better story. The importance of maintaining balance is a constant theme of the Earthsea magic system. It's never said in so explicitly scientific words, but wizards have to always keep in mind that the ecosystem of the world is the way it is for a reason, and messing with it can have dire consequences. You could easily use a spell to drive away the rain clouds and have a nice sunny day to enjoy, but do it enough times and your homeland might find itself in pretty dire straits when all their crops die off from drought. 20 years after finishing the trilogy, Le Guin wrote a follow-up book to the series, Dahanu, the Last Book of Earthsea. I believe it was intended to be like the Legend of Korra of the series. Set 20 years after the end of the last story, this book told of the life of Tana, the POV character from the Tombs of Aturan. Amusingly, Le Guin decided to revisit Earthsea yet again in 2001 and rendered the last book's subtitle ironic by writing The Other Wind with a completely new protagonist called Alda. In addition to the 5 main books, Le Guin also wrote 9 short stories set in the same world. Beautiful watchers, these books are so good. They're just awesome. They gave me the same sense of fantastical wonder as the Lord of the Rings, but with a slightly more personal journey focus, and dare I say it, possibly a little easier to get through. They're exciting, they're scary, they're interesting, they're emotional, they're thoughtful, and they're just a whole lot of fun to read. Le Guin wasn't afraid to write a flawed character, and she has a real talent for character growth as well. You can tell it's the same Ged in every story, but you also feel how the decades between the books have changed him, made him stronger, wiser, less impulsive. In 2006, the world-famous Japanese animation studio, Studio Ghibli, produced a feature-length adaptation of Earthsea, drawing from an approximation of the plots of all the books except for the 5th and final one. This is not the adaptation I'm reviewing today, and I'm sorry if that's disappointing, but Studio Ghibli is fanatically protective of its copyrighted footage. To this day, they remain the only company that's ever given me a copyright strike and forced me to take a video off YouTube completely. Or so they think. Howl's Moving Castle Patreon exclusive, link in the video description. What? I didn't say anything. What? This film is generally considered to be one of Studio Ghibli's weaker movies. It didn't underperform or anything, but it seems to be somewhat a victim of poorly holding up when compared to the studio's other productions. Le Guin charitably said that it was a very visually pleasing movie, but definitely not a faithful adaptation of her work. That said, it was undoubtedly still a massive, massive improvement on the first attempt, which took place in 2004. The Legends of Earthsea TV miniseries on the Sci-Fi Channel. I hope you can take my word for it that I am not being overly dramatic when I say that The Legends of Earthsea is the worst adaptation of a really good book that I have ever seen. It edges out iRobot, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Even Artemis Fowl comes out ahead of this mess. Let's start at the beginning again. Le Guin was promised a lot to sign over the rights to Earthsea by the purchasing production company Hallmark Entertainment. The most relevant to her decision being they told her they had signed Philippa Boyens, the co-writer of the Lord of the Rings movie, to write the adapted screenplay. They also offered her a position as a consultant with assurances that she would be given a lot of input into the writing process. Unfortunately, this and all their other promises were not officially written into the contract. Le Guin's agency couldn't get them to budge on this, but they managed to convince her that they genuinely did care about her story and wanted to do right by it. There was apparently a very brief stall while Hallmark got backing for the miniseries from the Sci-Fi Channel, and within those few months a new producer had taken over the project and they had lost Philippa Boyens. Le Guin was then completely cut out of the process. They sent her a few copies of the script but completely ignored any and all concerns she had about it. They had pretty much started shooting before they mailed it to her. Worst of all, Philippa Boyens was replaced with Gavin Scott, the guy who wrote Small Soldiers. That has got to be the most horrifying and crushing bait and switch in human history. Le Guin was basically forced to wait until the movie aired on television to see what they had done to her story, just like everyone else. I'll give you the full scope of just how colossally they failed on every level to understand her books in the next episode, but for now, suffice to say, it was very upsetting for her. Shortly after it came out, Le Guin absolutely slayed it in an online essay that I'll link in the video description.
When I looked over the script, I realized the producers had no understanding of what the books are about and no interest in finding out. All they intended was to use the name Earthsea, and some of the scenes from the books in a generic Mick-magic movie with a meaningless plot based on sex and violence.
The most egregious sin to her was their insistence on whitewashing the cast. As I tried to make clear, she put a lot of effort into creating heroes that represent more than just people who shared her skin color, and she fought so hard to be allowed not to hide that behind misleading book covers. Seeing them revert her story back to an almost exclusively white American ensemble must have been just awful. Le Guin is certainly not the first and will not be the last author to receive this kind of treatment from a film studio, but in this case it really struck a nerve with me. The outright lies that they used to get her to sign away her stories, then the obvious lack of interest they showed in it when they had it. If it had had any redeeming features whatsoever, maybe this pill would have been less hard to swallow, but if you were wondering if it was at least good as a standalone work, even if it failed as an adaptation, no, it was obnoxious to sit through in every conceivable way. It's actually hard to decide if it fails more as an adaptation or a TV show, but I am definitely getting ahead of myself now. We will discuss this in great detail in the next episode. In lighter news, I am genuinely so excited to talk to you about the details of this episode's Audible sponsorship. Audible is an unmatched online repository of audiobooks. With membership, you get a free credit at the start of every month that can be exchanged for any audiobook on the app, regardless of price. Now, Le Guin may be a new favourite of mine, but Neil Gaiman is very established in my good books, and, random fun fact, unlike me, he has always been a fan of Le Guin, so he would have been excused from the synchronized slap at the start. The Sandman is an exceptionally popular fantasy horror comic book series written by the good Mr. Gaiman. It started in 1989 and is still putting out monthly issues to this day, referred to by the Los Angeles Times magazine as the greatest epic in the history of comic books. The reason I'm so excited is Audible has adapted the first 3 volumes into an exclusive audiobook available right now for download by following the link in the video description or by going to audible.com/Sandman. Just to be clear, this is a full cast audio performance. Gaiman does some of the narrating himself, but he's joined by James McAvoy, Ritz Ahmed, Kat Dennings, Taron Egerton, Samantha Morton, BB Newirth, Andy Serkis, and Michael Sheen. It's got sound effects, it's got soundtrack, it's pretty damn epic in general. Visit audible.com/Sandman to start listening to the new Audible original, The Sandman, for free with a 30-day trial. Thank you for joining me, my beautiful watchers. I hope you tune in next time so we can continue down this rabbit hole of desecration of Le Guin's work together. In the meantime, if you'd be so good as to help a fellow out with the good likes, shares, and subscribings, I'd be most appreciative. Please take care of yourselves out there. Much love.
Turn back the page to a far gone age before time began. From House Le Guin there came a queen, we've no choice but to stand. Her pen was mightier than the sword, by every account one could record. She totally wrecked at the Hugo Awards, Ursula K Le Guin. Her master grand with a dexterous hand and words hotter than fire. The tales she told so deft and bold they could not help but inspire. From the tongue of every poet and bard, her name was sung with the highest regard, even earned the praise of Orson Scott Card, and that guy's a dick.
Much love and appreciation to my patrons of honor, Shelby Holtz, Sam Cucinotta, and Atel Spurdloff, and special thanks to this video's co-producer, Kate Robinson. Be sure to check out her channel for more of that sweet, sweet YouTube content. This episode was going to be a standard— ooh, my voice cracked there like I was a child. Well, pretend that didn't happen. Go ahead and raise your hand, either hand is fine, and then slap yourself in the face. If you don't have the guts to do it really hard, you can do it like 4 or 5 times in rapid succession. No, come on. Ow. Doing it too hard. And they're just a whole lot of fun to read. So Terry, why would you need to eviscerate the curtains right now? Le Guin's constipation. It's a mythology that dates back as far as ancient and intelligently she applied its use to her world. Oh, my bones. Why? The cats are being noisy, but they're being too cute to throw out. If you can learn a thing's true name, it gives you a Greek period. Set 20 years after... You are not what I need right now, noisy car man. And rendered the last book's subtitle ironic by writing the other win. That was poorly timed. Most people, I love you, buddy, but you're right. Sitting right slap bang in the middle of where I need to stand to film. You want to be part of the show? Figured the bloopers wouldn't be the same without you, didn't you?